We're coming, and we ain't backing down.
We don't need a bunch of cats in here looking in the mirror.
Everybody shoot! Your job! You understand that?
Hey, will you shut up?
I'm bitterly disappointed with the officiating today.
Guys being dudes.
And they run through our like through a tin horn, man.
Thank you, Lee. Conference preview season rolls on here at Split Zone Duo. I'm Alex Kirshner, joined by Richard Johnson, and a frequent flyer, one of the great guests that we get to have on the show from time to time, Shehan Jayaraja of CBS Sports. Shehan, welcome back to the crew.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a little while.
I feel like it's been since like January, since the end of the season. It's been a long, cold off season.
If Shehan is on, you know what we're talking about. It's the Big 12. Shehan, you recently were at the Big 12 Media Days. First and foremost, also, Shehan wrote one of the great off-season stories that anybody has written in college football media on Texas Tech. We will certainly touch on that and get to that when we get to Texas Tech in the preview. But how were Big 12 Media Days? Because you were Big 12, I was at SEC. Decidedly different experiences.
Yeah, I definitely got the better end of the deal there. So last year, SEC and Big 12 were both in DFW, which, if you ask me, I think everything should just be in DFW all the time because it makes
Absolutely
my life
incorrect.
incredibly easy.
As wrong as any person has ever been at any.
But, so for this obviously gets a little inside baseball, but like the SEC is a made for TV event. They are shuttling guys from TV appearance to TV appearance. Now Richard gets to be one of the TV guys at least now, so he gets some folks, but like there is no outside access. You can't have a casual conversation with anybody at any point during the entire event. Whereas the Big 12, they're just like, what if we threw all of our coaches and our best players and also every athletic director essentially just into a football field and just said, hey, hang out.
Did I see that at the Big 12 Media Days this year, they had everyone in full uniform?
No, okay,
Yeah.
so what happened? They at all of these and many of these Media Days events, right? What happens is, they have like shoots for conference promo stuff, ESPN promo stuff. Like a lot of that stuff is filmed at these events. So like they weren't in uniforms the whole time. They, most of them came in suits or polos or whatever, and then went through and changed into their uniforms, did all the sort of like hype video type stuff. And then they typically changed back out of them and then, sat at the podium and, talked to people, all that sort of stuff. But because it's such a relatively loose event where people can grab people and get them on camera or whatever, like, yeah, you got interviews of guys like walking through with their uniforms on, which is kind of a funny experience. But no, generally speaking, they're in their suits or polos or whatever.
The best part to me about Big 12 Media Days, and it will segue us into the first school we will talk about, Arizona State, was when Brett Yormark was like, oh, I think Arizona State was dinged in the eyes of the committee because they were ranked last in the preseason poll. Therefore, we are doing away with preseason polls, even though he conveniently forgot to state that Arizona State lost 2 games, including to Cincinnati.
Yeah. It's funny. I had that conversation even last year when I was doing Big 12 title game preview stuff of like Arizona State. I mean, look, I keep an eye on everybody. Let's be clear. But like, I don't think it's a secret that I probably watched less Mississippi State early last year than I did, Alabama or whatever. And so like, look, Arizona State was one of those teams that 2 years ago was just a bad football team and had crazy injuries and did not look ready. And the pathway to being pretty good seemed hard. And especially, I think that I probably underrated the trench talent that they had because they had struggled so much the year before. And that Cincinnati game, it's funny that you bring it up, was kind of the moment where I was like, okay, well, if they win this game, then like I got to start watching them. Like I got to take them seriously. And then they lost. And so like, even mid-season, you're like, nah, this isn't like even a top 25 team, right? Like this isn't even a particularly good team. And yeah, Sam Leavitt was out as, because Arizona State fans will make sure that I want to mention that. But like they were a team that really only came together towards the end of the year after being extremely bad in year one. And so look, I think that, Arizona State, if they start top 25, sure, I think their narrative is a little different. BYU is actually the team that probably, I think, got screwed a little more by this than Arizona State. But like, it wasn't because of the preseason poll, if you're outside of the top 25 to start the year, like, you gotta prove yourself pretty early on to set the narrative about yourself. And when you play a 1-score game against a bad Mississippi State team and then lose 2 games, that has a lot more to do with your situation than the fact that the media put out an official poll.
Brett Yormark has to be seen as doing something, because he did his TV deal a couple of years ago, did well in that, like, fulfilled his core function as a conference commissioner. They did their realignment. They got a TV deal. They jumped the Pac-12 in line. Nice job, Brett. Well done. But then he just has to be saying stuff for the next 4 or 5 years, because there's really nothing else for him to do.
I do appreciate that about Brett Yormark. Like, Brett Yormark will just say stuff, and
he will just say stuff.
All right, it's more interesting for me.
I will say too, we were lucky enough at CBS Sports to get one-on-one rooms, so we got all 15 of the 16 coaches. I'll let you guys guess which coach did not do that. It wasn't just for CBS this year; he didn't do anybody else. But they were pretty unanimous that, no, we don't like having a preseason poll. We don't want that. So the way that they're trying to frame it too is that, our coaches told us we don't want this. Again, I think that it's a little overrated. I think that conversation is actually the one coach who didn't really seem to care and was like, I'm fine having a preseason poll, was Kenny Dillingham. He was fine with it. He was like, who cares? It's a conversation piece.
Also, you want to be picked last, because remember a couple of years ago, West Virginia was picked last. Yep. Now, obviously, he has in fact been fired, but it did take an extra year.
Never wrong, just early.
Never wrong, just early. But Neil Brown got indignant about it. It was bulletin board material for West Virginia, and they had a pretty good year that year. He did get fired, so it comes for us all. But
quite literally, the beauty of the 12-team playoff is that an Arizona State 2024 can happen. That is literally the picture perfect, okay, this is a good thing. We will absolutely forget about you for 6 weeks of the year. You will come on strong in November. You will take Texas to overtime? Yeah, man, cool. Now, I know that we're changing, obviously, because we're doing the straight seeding thing, which, again, I think is fine. We've talked about it on the show a lot, Sean. But, yeah, it's weird. It's dumb. Anyway, Sean, can Arizona State do it again, basically, is the overlying question for the Sun Devils.
Yeah, I think that they can. And I think that this is a team that very much, first of all, arrived early. This was not supposed to be a team that was ready right away. That was supposed to be good in year 2. I think that if you ask people on that staff, Cam Skattebo obviously is gone, and he was a huge part of their success. But they have a lot there. They have a lot in that organization. They're top 10 nationally in returning production. This is a team that mostly is what they were last year in a positive way, except with an offseason to build on that, with clarity at the quarterback position in Sam Leavitt, with an all-conference safety in Xavier Alford, with a fantastic interior lineman in CJ Fight. This is a team that should be ready to go.
Shehan, in the realm of finding the bad things here, or finding the what could kind of gum this up a little bit. We like to play Rosebud Thorn on these previews. I think there are almost so many roses here that it's kind of the polar opposite of last year. So you can pick one out of a hat if you like them. But I think the fact that all of their good players except Cam Skattebo are back might be. But I am curious about the other things.
Yeah. So, no, like you said, so many roses to come through. I think that, whether you want to talk about the returning production, whether you want to talk about Sam Leavitt coming in as, I think, clear QB1 in the conference heading into the year, at least, whether you want to talk about the fact that they retained their entire coaching staff, including both coordinators, both of whom had other opportunities and also likely could have gotten in the mix for some head coaching opportunities with the way that they executed last year. So they kept everybody. That's definitely the rose. When you start to think about the bud, look, I mentioned Cam Skattebo is gone, but they've got some exciting pieces at running back. Kanye Udo comes over from Army. He was an 1,100-yard rusher last year. He was one of the more underrated players in the country. He was a huge part, along with Bryson Daly, of course, of Army having the breakout season that they were able to have last year. And he gives them a different dynamic. And, one of the things that I love about talking to Kenny Dillingham is that he's very clear-headed about these things. And he was like, look, what do you lose when you lose Cam Skattebo? And you lose inside the tackles running. You lose, third down conversion, stretch opportunities. You lose receiving out of the backfield. And they don't have a guy who can do all three of those things. But they have a bunch of guys, Kanye Yuta leading the mix, who they feel like can fill some of those roles. Raleek Brown was a player who missed last season with injuries, former 5-star player who transferred from USC.
Forgot all about him. Yeah.
Yep. And he's still on the roster. I don't think that even I realized that he was injured all of last year. I wasn't sure if he just didn't play, but no, they said that he was out for most of the season. He was known as a dynamic receiving threat, like very much an all-purpose back. And then Kyson Brown was the primary backup to Cam Skattebo as well. So they've got 3 guys in the stable. So they're not going to replace Cam Skattebo, of course, but I do think that they're going to be fine at the running back position. To go to a thorn, I mean, there's 2 things that kind of come to mind for me. One is doing the close game thing again year over year is just hard. I think back to the 2020 to 2021 Iowa State situation, where in 2020 they go 9-1, make the Big 12 title game. They return everybody in 2021. Like, this is Brock Purdy, Breece Hall, fantastic defense, all this stuff. And they go 7-6, and it's not because they're a much worse team, but you just don't get the bounces that you get last year. And Arizona State needed some bounces in the month of November to be able to pull things off. And it's just, I mean, this is a Big 12 thing. It's really, really unusual to be that level of good 2 years in a row. Now, not everybody's going to be 13-2 TCU to 5-7, but like, that's more common than the alternative of being there in back-to-back years. The other thing that comes to mind for me is that this was still a pass defense that was not very good last year. And they have to find a way to get better there. Now, returning experience is a big part of that, being a little bit more ready, adding a couple key pieces, having great leadership back there, I think is a big deal. But like, especially without as much consistency at the running back position and in the running game, you're going to need your defense to step up better than they did last year when they finished in the mid 80s in yardage defense.
Onwards to Iowa State. 10 years for Matt Campbell. Did anybody else realize that? A full decade for Matt Campbell in charge. He is comfortably the best coach in school history, is the winningest, I believe became the winningest coach in school history last year. Has gotten them in, I believe it's 2 conference championship games now. Has not summited, but gotten close. Again, it's Iowa State, so, you know. He's got Rocco Becht, who is sniffing records on this team. It'll be his 3rd year as a starter, and that kind of dovetails into my rows, just the consistency that they have. Obviously, John Haycock is still here at defensive coordinator. We'll get to that in 1 second. Carson Henson, Abu Sama back as running back tandem. Sama is a home run hitter. Absolute home run here. You need somebody like Henson to grind out the yardage and be that kind of classic thunder and lightning combination. Iowa State very much has it. Bud for me in Ames is Chase Soule, a transfer wide receiver from ECU. This dude is a walking explosive play. Like, and this, I think this is an offense that needs such a thing in the passing game, especially because of the receivers that it lost, 2 very talented receivers last year. Soule was a 20-yard per reception average player last year. I mean, he's got 40 and 50-yard catches all over the film. Absolute, he pops. He takes the top off your defense. I cannot wait to see him, hopefully, give Iowa State a different dimension to their offense. Defense, look, they're losing a ton up front. They're losing a ton on the back end. John Haycock's the defensive coordinator. They will figure it out. It is my thorn just because we need to find a thorn with this team that I think will be a comfortably upper 3rd team in the Big 12 and push for a conference title. But they're replacing a lot up front. It does need to be said.
You know, what do you think's the deal with Iowa State becoming one of the great skill position player development factories in college football in like the last 5-6 years?
I mean, I think it tells you that Matt Campbell can coach his tail off.
Because remember, it's a bunch of guys. It's not even just Purdy and Hall. It's Hutchinson, the wide receiver.
Yep.
But
Charlie Kohler.
There's a reason, Alex, why every now and then you hear an NFL team is interviewing Matt Campbell. It happened last year.
Yeah.
Like, the guy can coach. All right. And it's not sexy. We have made fun of it. We have poked fun at it. They have backslid. They have backslid and given you a 4-8 and then bounced back from it. Like, but at the end of the day, the guy can coach. Iowa State has been a contender in the Big 12 reliably.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge thing, right? Like, I get people asking me all the time. They're like, "Oh, cool, the 8-win Iowa State," and I'm like, "Yeah, the 8-win Iowa State coach. Look at their history." But like you said too, I think that they tend to just be a team and an organization on both sides that is very developmental. They tend to keep kids. I mean, even over the past 2 or 3 years, as they've, built up their coffers a little bit, like this has not been a team that's taken very many transfers. They've picked up some impact transfers in spots that they've needed it, but like they tend to be, not Clemson level, but in the Big 12, they're probably the closest thing. Like they want to keep guys around. They want to use their money to keep guys around. They want to tell kids, hey, if you come here, you're going to have a chance to be pretty good. And, I love that you mentioned, of course, Chase Sowell. Like, this is a dynamic on offense that they did not have last year because Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, like, they are big time receivers. And Noel gave you a little bit of explosiveness, but like, they were what you see at Iowa State more often is the great route running, big receiver, get to a spot and deliver, more an intermediate type pass. They haven't gone downfield very consistently with under Matt Campbell. Like even you go back obviously to Xavier Hutchinson. Like he is very much a possession guy. I'm excited to see if Sowell gives them a little bit of home run ability because I think that this isn't unique to Iowa State, but the difference between being a very good team consistently and being a game breaker is having a game breaker. And I'm wondering if Sowell, and I'll also mention Xavier Townsend coming in from UCF, who they're really excited about, if those can be guys who can go downfield.
Speaking of game breakers, I moved to the Cincinnati Bearcats, who have some of them. I think the interesting thing, my rose for this team this year, is that the high end of this roster on both sides of the ball is pretty high. They have, and I think fortunately seems to be completely healthy this year, Dante Corleone, they call him Vito, the man from Sicily at nose tackle, who had a really serious offseason medical problem last year that kept him out into like a game or two into the year, and I think had him on a pitch count for a lot of the year. But he's been one of the better interior linemen in college football for a few years when he's been healthy and on. He is still on this roster. Joe Royer was the best tight end in the conference last year. Broke a little bit of a Utah monopoly on having the best tight ends in the Pac-12, then Big 12, I guess, over the last couple of years. And they still have their quarterback, Brendan Sorsby, who I maybe somewhat have written off and not talked about as a serious guy because he's had a few rough games that I've happened to pay very close attention to, and he wasn't especially good at Indiana. But if you take it in totality, he was pretty much an average Big 12 starting quarterback last year across the board, which is a valuable thing. And then when you bring a guy like that back for another year, you're excited about the possibility for growth. So all those guys are still here. They got a 3-year starter at center, Gavin Gerhardt, who's still here. So the top end of this roster is pretty good. And I get why Scott Satterfield is talking optimistically. Like, it's not that it's that bold to say this is the best team I've had here when you've gone 3-9 and 5-7. You're just saying, I think I have a bowl team here at the minimum. But this does look like a better, more proven, certainly Cincinnati roster than we've seen his first couple of years there. So I have to rose that. My bud is that I'm curious, like, basically how everything else they did in the portal works out for them. Shehan, maybe you can help me decode this. At the podium at Big 12 Media Days, Scott Satterfield was sort of diplomatically complaining about house settlement allocations, which is usually the sign of, things aren't going the way I want with recruiting. Well, I say usually. I mean, it's been like 24 days that this has been the system, but that's how I would intuit that a coach is talking when he starts to talk about how he needs more house money. But at the same time, it didn't seem like they had a lot of big losses in the portal, like guys that they're going to miss a ton. And they had some other additions that they like. I really like Matt McDoom, this little cornerback who's a complete thumper who comes over from Coastal Carolina. Like, it seems like they've done pretty well in the player acquisition game. So I don't know. What is Satterfield complaining about? Not clear to me.
Well, it's interesting. I spoke to and asked directly a few coaches about their house and rev share situation, right? Because the Big 12 has essentially said pretty publicly, like, hey, all of our schools are fully funding, paying the full thing, all that sort of stuff.
Sure.
Talking to some people at media days, it's a little more complicated than that. Now, what I'll say, and this is just conference-wide, I think that in the next year or two, all 16 Big 12 schools will have the maximum number.
When the price goes up, by the way, Shehan.
Yes, when the price goes up. It's going to go up year over year. I don't think, especially when we talk specifically about the transitioning programs, other than BYU, they're living in their own universe right now. But the other three transitioning former group of fives who are not getting a full payout at this point, I think that it's a little more complicated. I asked Scott Satterfield specifically about this, and he said, essentially, we're competitive, which, that I think that's an indication
with
of
whom. I think is the question.
Yes, he said we're not bottom of the conference, which congratulations. And so,
but who is bottom of? Nobody's bottom of the conference. Nobody's like, oh, someone's bottom of the conference, but
yeah. Well, I think I think it's complicated, right? And this is actually a conversation I've had with some people over the past couple of days. Is like, there's one, can't fund bottom of the conference, and there's two, have money going other places bottom of the conference, right? Like and so I think that Cincinnati right now, I would imagine, is in the lower third relative to Big 12 teams of what they're allocating to football right now. Houston's another team that I know is still trying to get there, though, again, they will get there eventually. I'm not really sure where UCF sits, but I know that, again, similar complicated situation. And by the way, very messy roster we'll get to. But I think that for Cincinnati, like, I imagine that what Scott Satterfield's saying is, we had enough to keep our guys around, and that's about it. And you look at some of the other teams in the portal that were able to be more consistent buyers, I guess, let's say, of power conference level talent. I think that Cincinnati felt like, hey, we just kind of had to bring some bodies in, with a couple exceptions.
I'm intrigued to see where this goes. So I'm not thorning that, but I think I'm wondering, especially for the transitioning schools, which Cincinnati still is, kind of where that's all going to lead, though it does not seem like it really crushed them in this offseason. My thorn, the thing that I am worried about, defensive front got blown off the ball last year, rushing success rate allowed, yards before contact allowed, ugly numbers in those regards. I think that improves a bit, probably, with Corleone being fully healthy for the entire season. But the good Big 12 teams I've heard are now about blocking and tackling. It's not 2015 anymore. And do they have the tacklers in the defensive trenches to actually be really good in this conference? I lean no, but open question, and we're going to see where it goes. Richard, take us to Boulder, Colorado.
Perhaps you've heard of them, Colorado Buffaloes. All right, here's my rose. Shehan, I need to ask you if I'm dead wrong about this. It actually won't be that much of a circus this year. Now, buddy, am I ready to be wrong about this one? But I do think relatively to when you had the Heisman Trophy winner and one of the better natural athletes we've ever seen in the sport, and the head coach's son as your QB1 doing his own vlogs pretty much every day, I think just having the head coach be kind of the puppet master of all the attention will give you a relative less of a circus this year. Now, who knows? Warren Sapp's still on staff. Marshall Faulk is newly on staff. There's what was it? TBS's slogan used to be like "Characters Welcome" or whatever that was. Look, it's Colorado football. We understand what this is, but I'm staking a claim here that the rose is that it won't be that much of a circus off the field, but we're on the field, quite frankly.
Yeah, well, I think that the on the field piece especially, right? Like, this is the funny thing about this Colorado team is that for the first time, essentially, a Deion Sanders coach team is just going to be a football team, and they might be a worse football team than last year when they were a pretty damn capable football team. Yes, but like, I mean, again, like, we're going from a situation where a lot of the team and roster and even strategy was, let's feature our two guys. And it's going to be, okay, well, no, like, we have kind of good players at every position now. We're going to be able to be more diverse. Like, I think that their coordinators, Pat Sherman and Robert Livingston, like, I think they're going to have, in some ways, a better time in 2025 just being able to drop football plays. The one circus thing is I'm not saying that Deion Sanders needs to tell us what's going on with his health,
But
like he tells us, I'm good, I'm blessed, I'm heading back to, and then like we get a report last week that actually this is still ongoing. And like, look, the big thing, and I want to be clear, like, it's not that it's a circus that he's not healthy, right? But it's just the public messaging about this is really, really complicated and really, really complicating, I would argue, because we just don't even know if he's going to be able to be on the sideline for the game. And if he's not, that is totally fine. That is like, take care of your health above anything else. But the last thing that a program should want to know is whether they have a head football coach this year. Because there's been more reporting coming out. You know, The Athletic has done a really good job on this. That like he wasn't even at most of their recruiting events this offseason. He wasn't even like in contact for parts of the year. And yes, you know, he's Deion Sanders. He has that cachet, all this sort of stuff. But it's like, if he's going to have to like step away at some point, which again is well within his right, it just makes things really, really complicated.
Yeah.
The Pat Shurmur factor, I think, can help just because you've got a guy at the wheel who can run things in Deion's absence. So keep that in mind. That is something that matters here.
Yes.
And frankly allows Deion to step away. You know, as we've said on this show about Colorado, like there's no reasonable expectation you could have had for this Colorado thing that Deion Sanders and the Buffaloes have not surpassed. Like that is a fact. There's no reasonable expectation that they haven't summoned it. So what is the second act here now that the best players are gone? The Deion health thing was one of my thorns for this Colorado program. Look, insert can they run the ball concern, because that's always going to be there.
I'm going to say no, but yes,
it's always going to be there. Jordan Seaton's a great player at left tackle. What are the other four? What do the other four give you? They lost their right tackle to Texas Tech, right?
Colorado is post offensive line, though. We learned that with Colorado, it actually doesn't matter if you can block.
My bud though is actually Jaheim Otis. Jaheim Otis comes in from Alabama. Lost season last year. He was a 4-and-done, shut it down redshirt player last year, and was not a fan of the Kalen DeBoer staff. You know, he frankly on the record said, "I came here to play for Nick Saban. Nick Saban left. See ya." So you know, keep that in mind. But the quarterback situation is another thorn that's there. Remember, they brought both of them to Big 12 Media Days to hang out with Shehan, Juju Lewis, and Caden Salter.
Yeah. How about that? I don't think I've ever seen two quarterbacks make that trip before.
SMU the year before, Kevin Jennings and Preston Stone.
Oh my God.
And it was because Preston Stone was about to get unseated.
Yeah. So keep that in mind. Yes, they are losing the entire wide receiver room. No, you do not replace Travis Hunter, but I am confident they can replace LeJontay Wester and Will Shepherd. I'm very, very confident that they can.
Traylon Miller's a really good player.
They bring in Hakeem Williams, who's a recruit from Florida State. That is also intriguing. So I think they'll be fine at wide receiver. Not Travis Hunter, but they'll be fine. Other than that, I think Colorado will be roughly what it was last year. They went, 9-3 last year, and certainly better at the end of the season than they were at the beginning. I mean, we watched that Nebraska game where they looked awful.
Yeah. I was ready to pack up shop after that Nebraska game, and things definitely changed.
I definitely am curious, though, because, again, like I mentioned, they will be more of a normal, structured football team this year. The thing that I'm curious about is that they offensively were so built around the home run play. And not just in terms of, like, the 50-yard play, in terms of, like, Shador's running around and or Travis Hunter's running around. And they have the receivers there to be really good, certainly. But can Caden Salter buy time and throw on the run? Is Julian Lewis ready to do that? Are they going to be able to protect long enough that you can have 3 seconds to throw it? You know, that's, I think, the one thing that's sort of a big concern for me with this Colorado team is just, are they going to be able to have the time and flexibility to be good at passing again this year? But like I mentioned, I think their defense could be pretty dang good. Robert Livingston, I think, was the breakout star of last season that not enough people talked about. And this is a unit that returns some pretty key pieces. And so I do think that they're going to be right in that kind of middle class of the Big 12. And but it's really going to determine their ceiling, whether they're able to get much of anything from the passing game.
Shehan, take us to Waco, Texas, home of your alma mater, the Baylor Bears, who I am seriously toying with picking in this conference this year.
I think that is very legitimate and very fair. They have expectations of being in that conversation at the end of the year. And the Rose, I mean, Sawyer Robertson is like really good, their quarterback. Like he is really, really good. He came on in the second half of the year. And I think the coordinator change going from Jeff Grimes to Jake Spavital helped him more than just about anybody. Like he came in, I think that he's much more comfortable. For people who don't know, and I'll have a story on this in the coming weeks, like he was recruited by Mike Leach to Mississippi State. That's where he signed up to play offense. And then he came back to a very pro-style situation with Jeff Grimes and was passed over twice, by the way, for the starting quarterback job. Stuck out, and also took a pretty big, pretty below market deal to stay at Baylor as well. So they have a quarterback who, again, Sam Levitt is the consensus QB1 coming into the year, but I think that Sawyer has a very, very legitimate case to be QB1 in the Big 12. And when you have a player like that, it just elevates what you're able to do. And they've tried to surround him with a couple more weapons. They brought in Kobe Prentice from Alabama. Their top receiver, Josh Cameron, is back. So that is, I think, a dynamic that's going to be real. The bud, and this is not something that's just going to impact this year, is Dave Aranda has figured out recruiting. Because you look back 2 or 3 years ago, and they've been very upfront about it. They were extremely conservative when it came to NIL. At the very beginning of all of it, they were like hey, everybody should get the same thing on the roster type of situation. Yeah, obviously that did not work. And when you look at a 3-9 season, that plays, I think, a big role in it. They figured it out, and they had a great recruiting class come in this year. In 2026, don't look now, the Baylor Bears have 3 top 100 recruits committed, most in the Big 12. They have right now, I think, the number 1 or number 2 class in the Big 12. And this has been a multi-year trend, both in terms of acquiring high school players for long-term success, but also in terms of acquiring transfers and bringing in guys who make sense for their roster to get them ready. So I think that certainly, I think that you could make the case that Dave Aranda adjusted slower than almost any coach to the new era. Not the, there's the Dabo and all that, but I think that you look at 2020, 2021, 2022, he set himself behind the 8 ball, but I think that this is more of what you should expect Dave Aranda to be in terms of now he's adjusted and he's ready for this moment. The thorn that I'll throw out there is, ironically, Dave Aranda's defense, which he calls now, was not very good last year and was especially miserable against the pass. This was a team that they brought back some key pieces and they just did not grow. And they actually made some changes in their secondary staff, bringing in Paul Gonzalez, the secondary coach from TCU, who has been behind, some of the multiple Thorpe Award winners. He's a really, really good secondary coach, but they brought in a safety in Devin Turner from Northwestern. Looks like he's going to be out for the year. And so they don't necessarily have great personnel back there. They have all right personnel, but they need this pass defense to come along if they're going to have a serious chance to contend for the Big 12.
Man, are we going back? Are we going back to late 2010s Big 12 style of play? Are we going to have some 49-40 Baylor type games?
No, but it's because the guy that I also didn't mention, by the way, is that actually maybe the best player on the roster is Bryson Washington, the running back. So like this is still a league that has moved much further towards the run, but there are 11 returning quarterbacks in this conference, and that doesn't count some of the really good transfers that came in as well. Guys like Devin Dampier, who we'll get to, guys like Caden Salter at Colorado. So this should be a really, really good quarterback conference for the first time in probably 3 or 4 years.
Shehan, you mentioned Colorado. You mentioned Baylor's recruiting. I'm just going to do it now instead of later in the show. This Big 12 minority coach of the week in an interesting schematic spot. Again, not a predictor or portender of schematic success. It's simply taking a coach in a certain situation and saying, that's interesting. It's Keenan Hall, who is the running backs coach for Baylor, who has really helped them figure out when he came over from SMU, frankly, how to recruit. Most notably, how to recruit in the Metroplex, and which you are in Waco, you should probably figure out how to do that. Now, Bryson Washington is actually, funny enough, from south of Waco. He's like, I think halfway between
he's like
Waco
Brazos Valley,
Station.
Closer to like College Station.
Yeah. But Hall, I believe his title is like associate head coach and running backs coach as well. He has really helped them legitimize the shop from a talent perspective in Waco, and been huge for Dave Aranda as they've pivoted into more of a recruiting force. I mean, they wore those. What were those shirts that said?
I was just going to bring those up. There are two things I want to mention with Keenan Hall. One, he came out wearing a shirt that said "We pay players" because, again, Baylor had been very slow to the party in terms of embracing this, and that people obviously have a ton of fun with that. The other thing, too, is that, of course, you mentioned them being able to get further into the Metroplex, and he has incredible relationships, like you mentioned, at SMU. He's a former DFW high school football player, all this sort of stuff. The other piece, too, is that I think that he's helped them be a lot more aggressive in Central Texas specifically. There's kind of this generation of players in Central Texas, Temple, Waco area, all that sort of stuff. And there's like probably 6 or 7 of them who are top, 200 players or whatever. And they've landed like 3 or 4 of them, which is not common. They landed a kid named Jamarian Carlton over Texas, who's a top 40 player from Temple High School. And they really haven't gotten a guy like that from Temple, which, by the way, is in between Waco and Austin. This is the first time in close to a decade that they've gotten that level of player from Temple High School, which is frankly unacceptable for the way that Baylor's recruited over the past couple of years. So I think that Keenan Hall has really come in. He has a mind for recruiting, not just in terms of the actual, building relationships and delivering kids, but I think he also has played a big role, along with, obviously have to point to their general manager, Aaron Hunt's done a great job, all these other people on staff as well. But I think that Keenan Hall kind of brought urgency in recruiting in so many ways. And especially I'll mention since Joey McGuire left in 2021, they hadn't really had a guy like that on staff just pushing the envelope. And, again, he's been pursued, I know, and he's stuck around so far. So I think Baylor's very lucky to have him, and he's a big part of their success.
Pretty bullish on Baylor. Also, I feel like in general, recruiting has just kind of moved in Dave Aranda's direction. Like, Dave Aranda was never like a retail politics, go kiss babies, shake hands type of guy.
No, he quite literally, I've watched the clinic tape where he was like, yeah, coaching 5-stars is like not really my thing. When he was at LSU, he literally gave a frankly quite eloquent explanation of why coaching a player like Jamal Adams at LSU is very different for him and very challenging for him.
And now you just get him in a room with with an agent or whoever, or his player personnel guys, and it just seems easier for him.
He just has to be the closer is the thing, right? Like, he just has to be the closer as opposed to the whole process. And, it's funny that you mentioned that. I talked to Dave Aranda when I was doing previews for Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine in 2021. And it will not be a shock to anybody who's ever talked to Dave Aranda that we got off topic. But he did kind of say, like, one of the things about Baylor that he loved is that, he coached at LSU, he coached at Wisconsin, now he's at Baylor. Wisconsin is a developmental program. You bring kids in, you try to get the most out of them, you try to fit kids, all that sort of stuff. The SEC, he said, kind of in general, is a player acquisition league. Like, it is a get good guys in the room and deploy them. You kind of don't get to, not that you don't get to work with them, but it's different. It's a different type of game. You're constantly churning rosters for that reason. He felt like Baylor was the best of both worlds for him. Of we're going to get good players because of where we are, but also the hope is I have 3 or 4 years with them to help develop them in a way that fits for me. So again, it'll be interesting to see. Again, they're getting a quality of player right now that's closer to the, not the Jamal Adams level, certainly, but it is going to be a little different, and it's going to be different managing personalities and things like that with this level of player. But, again, Dave Aranda has gotten it right eventually a bunch of times. We're going to have to see if he can adjust quicker heading forward.
One quick note, by the way, Richard and I will see you in Raleigh, North Carolina on August 23rd at the Sports Podcast Festival. Richard, Godfrey, and I, the founding crew of Split Zone Duo, all together doing a fun show on Week 0 Saturday. Raleigh's going to be the place to be on Week 0 Saturday. It's kind of ringing the season at the Rialto, great local theater. You can get your tickets at www.splitzoneduolive.com. And we've got a promo code, too, to make it an even better deal. You get to see us, a few other great shows. We'd love to meet you afterward. Code SZD at checkout at splitzoneduolive.com for 25% off. Also, Richard, you have a quick audience participation thing.
We're writing an audio love letter to college football, and we want your submissions. The question is simple, but open-ended. Why do you love college football? It could be what got you into the game, who got you into the game, or what keeps you around. Here's how to submit an entry one of two ways. In the show notes for this episode, we'll link to our VoiceCast page if you want to submit via laptop or Google, or we also have a Google Voice line if you want to submit via phone. Shehan submitted this morning. Everybody's into it. Everybody's doing it. Why don't you? Please submit by the end of business, Tuesday, July 29th. For possible inclusion in the show, we'll try to include as many as we can.
Phone number in the show notes. All right, Richard. Kansas State, a team that I was sort of in on last year for the Big 12, and it really didn't happen. But I think they could be pretty good again.
Yeah, maybe. Like the all Big 12 center, Sam Hecht is back. Problem is the rest of the offensive line is not. So it's a Rose situation that you've got a great player back to help your quarterback out, Avery Johnson, who still is very boom or bust as a player. Booms are great. Busts are not. The bud here, I think, is when you think about this Kansas State team, I think you have an idea about that they are the like Colin Klein, grounded out, like 2.5 yards in a cloud of dust. Like they're just going to grind you in submission. That's not this team. They are we talked about the Big 12 moving away from the explosive, and now, they're not running air raid in Manhattan, but they are this is a peaks and valleys outfit. You've got Dylan Edwards, who is not churning out yards. Now he'll go for 40, but it's easier for him to go for 40 than it is for him to go for 4. Keep that in mind. You've got a Jace Brown, Caleb Medford's in from New Mexico, by the way, who I think is a very intriguing talent. So pay attention to that. But it's a new offensive line outside of Hecht. I have some questions about, from a consistency standpoint, what Kansas State can be. They were sloppy last year. Sloppy, especially in their losses. Turnovers, bad snaps. The lows for Avery Johnson are quite low indeed. So I do not see this as this consistent, watertight outfit that you would like for Chris Kleiman. The question is, can they raise the floor just a little bit, especially on offense and in the back end of the secondary, where they were quite porous, by the way? Can they raise the floor to at least offset the fact that they will be quite explosive?
Sean, I got a question about this team. They have their best recruit ever, this 5-star tight end, Lincoln Cure. But tight end is a tough position to really do anything as a freshman at. Like Brock Bowers did. He's pretty good. Michael Mayer a few years ago at Notre Dame did. It's pretty hard to find. I mean, every year there's, someone's got to be the freshman All-American tight end. But like it's kind of hard to take the sport by storm at that position with only, 9 months or so in a college weight room. I'm wondering if you've heard anything or have any view of what we should expect of by far like the glossiest player addition that they've ever made to their program, and if he's going to be much this year.
Yeah, I mean, he'll definitely, I think, play. This is a team that definitely is no stranger to playing multiple tight ends, and they feel pretty good about the tight ends that they have in their program. So, I don't expect him to be a starter in the first half of the year. Let's put it that way. I don't think that this is a 1-year play. This is a multi-year play. This is hey, man, after 3 years, you can be a first-round tight end. And so I expect them to rotate him into the lineup. And here's the thing, too, right? He comes in, I don't know what he's at now, but as a recruit, he was 6'5", mid 220s, let's say. So not tight end sized as yet. They have a great strength and conditioning program. I imagine he's probably pushing closer to 240 right now. So I do think that they're going to use him. I think that they're going to use him probably most as a receiver right now. And the thing that you kind of hope is they give him more safety blanket. And actually, to go back to the receivers for a second, because like you said, Avery Johnson had incredible highs and had some really low lows. And they felt like, talking to them, this was an offense and a receiver room that just didn't give him enough easy stuff. Like everything, like Jace Brown was kind of that one guy that they felt great about. And after that, it was a lot of kind of moving around. It was a lot of kind of trying to find pieces that made sense. And that's why you see them being so aggressive in the transfer portal. You mentioned Caleb Medford, who before New Mexico was a TCU recruit. Another one that I'll point out as well is Jaron Bradley coming over from Boston College, a very big receiver who started his career at Texas Tech as well. So, like, I imagine with Lincoln Cure, with Jaron Bradley, with Caleb Medford, with Jace Brown coming back, they want to give Avery Johnson as a passer some easier opportunities and some easier targets. So I think that we'll see Lincoln Cure. I think that he'll be a part of the game plan, but this is only going to be the first step because, like you said, unless you're Brock Bowers or Michael Mayer, like, you're probably not taking the sport by storm in year one.
No, it's hard to do, but I am excited about the long-term possibility of a tight end of that recruiting caliber being in a climate offense. I think it could be fun, even if it takes some time. Speaking of teams that are doing interesting recruiting things, so I think the most interesting of their recruiting stuff is not going to be noticeable until 2026. I got BYU here, the quick report. My Rose thumpers at linebacker. Thumpers. Several of them, led by Isaiah Glasker, who had 11 TFLs, 4 PBUs, 3 picks last year. Richard likes to talk about central casting linebackers. He has the huge neck roll. You definitely want him first off the bus. He wears the number 16, which is pretty cool. BYU does just always have good linebackers, you notice. I'm not going to throw out the W word, which is Warner here.
Not the W word I thought you were going to throw out.
Me neither.
I'm not even sure what we're talking about, to be honest with you, and I'm going to just let it keep going. But they've had great linebackers over their history, going back to like probably longer than this, but Fred Warner, Kyle Van Noy, others. Jack Kelly is another senior on this roster who had 5 sacks last year. He's back. Probably the best linebacker group in the Big 12, and the kind of linebacker room that might be able to cover up problems if they should arise elsewhere on the defense because of the ranginess of these players, a couple of them in both coverage and run stopping. My bud is that it seems like the wide receiver pipeline continues to be strong. Chase Roberts is still here. Best of the bunch last year. He's back. Versatile guy who they move around outside and in, and he just catches everything. They still have the solid running back of last year, LJ Martin, so there's some skill position foundation to build on. My bud is who supplements them, because it does feel like every single year BYU gets the emergence of somebody, particularly in the wide receiver room, sometimes at running back, who becomes a really good college football player who you're not thinking much of going into the year. I'm curious who that's going to be for them in 2025. And the thorn is probably the most obvious one of the episode, which is no quarterback. Jake Retzlaff is gone. Honor code situation out. Probably the quarterback seems like it's Trayson Bourget, who played previously for Western Michigan, had 2 years of sporadic action, 22 and 23, and had exactly one game where he really popped off against a 4-8 Ball State team. Maybe he got a lot better sitting in this program last year for BYU as a backup. Better hope so, because it's just not good to lose your quarterback in the summer, and that's exactly what has happened with BYU.
Yeah, what I've heard, a lot of people think it's going to be McKay Hillstead, the Utah State player. So I mean,
that's interesting. Yeah.
So just to give some context on both players, like you said, Bourget, I don't think that he's officially started a game at Western Michigan, but he played, like you said, quite a bit. McKay Hillstead started 4 games at Utah State. He's like a very small quarterback, but kind of dynamic. He's more of a runner. Neither played a single snap last year. Both were in the organization, to be clear, but neither played a snap last year because Retzlaff obviously was a starter and Gary Bohannon was the backup. So, like, they haven't played live snaps. They haven't really played any live snaps against power conference competition. So, like, it's not just... This is the thing to me that's unfortunate, because, like, losing a quarterback is one thing. But, like, losing a quarterback and just having no legitimate options behind him is just a
No,
really
I mean, they have
tough
the worst
position.
quarterback situation in the Big
Yes.
12, and it's like, it's not very. Yeah.
Yeah, there's another. There's another.
I
Yeah,
think
we'll talk
Stillwater
about them
would
next.
beg
We'll
to
talk about
differ.
them
Are we
next.
about to get to, are they the next team on the list, actually, as I look at it?
We will.
Okay,
We will
we'll
get to them. Don't worry.
They're
But-
a bottom couple quarterback situation in the Big 12.
Well,
This
I
next
think-
team
I
might
think-
be. Yeah.
Yes, the next team, which will, I'll say is Oklahoma State. Like, they at least have talent in their room. They just have no proven talent whatsoever. I don't know if BYU has talent in their room. The one guy who I do know has talent is the freshman coming over from Stanford, Bear Bachmeier. So, like, talking to some folks, right? Like, because this is a team that, if Jake Retzlaff is back, they might be my Big 12 title pick. Like, they were really good. They have a great organization there. They've done a great job year over year. I don't think people realize how good they were defensively last year. Like, if you look at opposing passer rating, they were top 3 in the country, and they, along with Texas, led the nation with 22 interceptions. So, like, it was a really, really good defense last year, and they're going to be a really, really good defense this year. But how much can you take at that quarterback position before everything kind of gets messed up? So, my guess, and this is just like, fan casting or whatever, like, I think that what's going to happen is I think that McKay Hillstead will be the starter to start the year. And I think that by the end of the year, Bear Bachmeier's the quarterback. And they kind of say, you're our guy of the future. We're not contending for the Big 12 this year. Maybe we win 8 games. Like, I think we'll still be fine. But, like, let's just hand the keys over, because clearly I don't think that McKay Hillstead or Trayson Borgett are the future of the program by any means.
Well, I think the future of the program is the guy who's coming in 2026, who they just spent some hysterical amount of money for.
Remember, it's 2027.
Sorry.
Yes, 2027.
Sorry. Thank you for reminding me. Ryder Lyons is his name, who is their highest rated recruit at quarterback in a very long time. But yes, BYU's got a money spigot with this stuff. So
don't ask me about their starting point guard. I don't want to talk about it.
No, so this is going to be right. Basketball as well is doing this too. So this is going to be probably the worst quarterback season for BYU, maybe ever going forward. Given
at least
the situation,
post Lavelle
recruiting. Yeah, it's just it'll get better, but I think it's going to be pretty tough at quarterback this year. All right, Richard, you have the other team that I guess we're kind of looking at here as maybe having the worst quarterback situation in the Big 12.
The question is, does Mike Gundy have one last job in him? And I don't know that he does, because, and I will say this about Gundy. Every time we've said he's washed, he can't do it, the game's passed him by, he's done, he finds a way to pull them out of the fire. But this is a tough road to hoe, man. I think he said something at Media Days along the lines of, like, this is the first roster we've bought, something like that, which makes sense when you look at how many transfers are here. The overarching question about Oklahoma State is simple: who the hell is playing quarterback? Zane Flores and Haas Hedgeny have a grand total of 0 career passing attempts, which is not what you want heading into the season. The entire offense is basically new. I went through and I counted. It's like either 8 or 9 of 11 guys are new on this offense.
Hey, remember last year when they had like the best returning running back in college football, and he ran for like 12 yards in the whole season?
Yeah. When they had a guy who was like in the 99 club in the video game, and he was an absolute non-factor last season.
That was really wild that happened. So maybe it's good that they're just starting over.
And I will mention Cody Nagel, my colleague over at CBS in 247, he put together this giant document of every power conference's returning starters. So per his math, they've got 4 returners across the entire roster and 1 on offense. Tight end Josh Ford, who was only the halftime starting tight end. It was enough that he counted as their starter. And he started 6 games for them.
You know, it's a good point, Shehan. Returning starters is a funny stat.
It's tough.
I'm not even really sure what I mean every time I say returning starters. Who are we counting? Are we counting certain transfers but not others? You have to take that one with a grain of salt when you hear it, including on this program. I don't think anyone knows what they mean when they say returning starters.
I think the way that he calculated it makes the most sense, which is essentially he allocated like the top guy at a position in terms of the most starts on the team. So you had to start at least half the season for in his mind to be considered. But like, again, this is the thing, right? Like, we don't even know what the hell is going on. Points is not a lot coming back from this team that also sucked, by the way, last year. And I want to emphasize, like you said, you talked about Ollie Gordon. They actually had good players last year on this team, right? Like Brennan Presley, wide receiver, good player. A couple of offensive linemen, good players. Ollie Gordon, good players. Colin Oliver and Nick Martin, actually good players. And they went 3-9 and then lost all of them.
By the way, featuring as defensive coordinator, Todd Grantham. Welcome back, sir. Now, again, Todd Grantham, I know Todd Grantham is a meme, like the third and Grantham. Like, Todd Grantham has had good defenses. It's not like
there's a reason he keeps getting hired,
right? Like it's not Todd Grantham.
Been a while.
I think people there's a false equivalency between like Todd Grantham and like Alex Grinch, which we will get to when we talk about our next team. Todd Grantham has actually had good defenses, so we will see if he is able to do that again this year. Different portal parts. Plenty of transfers up front, as Shehan has mentioned, because they got plenty of transfers all over this team. Some of this is the beauty of the portal. Now, look, it's pretty clear that at the end of last season, they sat Mike down and said, Mike, come on. Come on. And he saw the light, and he donated some of his roster to the cause, and so they turned it over. Okay, that's the beauty of the transfer portal era. But we're going to see
some of his roster to the cause.
We're going to see.
Welcome to the new era, man. Welcome to the new era. This is becoming more common than you'd realize. I was actually, some people go to ACC Media Day. Some people go to Big Ten Media Day. I'm a real one. So I was at Conference USA yesterday, and so
by the way, we must state for the record. Conference USA at PGA Frisco, was nobody going to tell me about this? Nobody was going to tell me that Conference USA did its media day at that new headquarters of the PGA and a future feature course of multiple PGA championships, both senior women and men over the next
I want to be clear. Richard, our editor, Jack, a bunch of other people were asking me all these questions about it. And I'm like, bro, I've played golf once in my life. I don't know what you're asking me right now. I don't know what to look for. You're like, do they have this and this and this? And I'm like, I'm in a room, bro. I don't know. Like, this is not my scene.
They have indoor bunkers in there.
Look, it sounds fun. It's an interesting locale for a college football media days, but
it was fun. Anyway, what I was saying before we get too off topic is I was talking to Scotty Walden yesterday, the coach at UTEP, and he donated $70,000 of his own money in matching funds to build rev share and NIL on this roster. Like, that's the level that we're at of just like trying to generate money, trying to generate opportunity. Like it is a serious
Honestly,
new ball game.
It's kind of a good trade for a Conference USA coach to give 100 G's to the roster, because one or two more wins could mean more than that. I mean, this is just an investment strategy if you're a head coach at pretty much any G5 or even certain P4s, if we're being honest about it. Okay.
And one more thing I wanted to mention about Gundy is that, because again, we got to talk to him, and you want to talk about kicking and screaming. Like that was the vibe that I got from him, that he was like, well, this is what we had to do. Like I mentioned Dave Aranda as one who's slow to adjust, but like Mike Gundy was like, well, this was the first roster we bought. He also said, by the way, that, which I'm kind of like shocked to hear a coach talk this candidly about it. They replaced 9 assistants this year. The only one that they brought back was their special teams coordinator. And he said, I was trying to go for assistants and coordinators who would let me keep my other assistants, and none of them were available. So I hired guys and then fired everybody else because the new coordinators didn't want to work with other guys. They wanted to bring their own guys, which is just a weird thing to like say out loud in front of a recorder.
Like he got rid of offensive coordinator Casey Dunn had been with him since 2005.
No, like everything. And this is what's so fascinating to me about this is there is nothing on this roster and in this organization at this point that was part of their success even 5 years ago, other than Mike Gundy himself. Everything else is new. Every staff member is new. A lot of the administration's new. They just went through a president change. Like almost nothing about Mike Gundy's previous success is still on the roster other than Mike Gundy. Now, again, I think that he is understanding the the severity of this moment and what he needed to do. And I actually do give him a lot of credit for that, in that he was aggressive with it. I don't know if it's going to pay off in 2025.
By the way, quick little game. Take a guess how many yards Ollie Gordon did have running the ball last year for Oklahoma State.
Has to be. I'm gonna go 625.
Shehan?
I'm gonna go 473.
I was actually shocked. It was 880 yards rushing from last year.
However, he also rushed for like 2,000.
A lot of this was happening. He had his two of his three biggest games, and by far his biggest game, were in the last 3 weeks of the season when all hope was lost and we had all tuned out. And then, so point is, it was brutal. It was ridiculous that they were not able to get more out of him last year, but they did get a few more yards than any of us remembered. Okay, to Orlando, UCF. Couple things. I guess first off, I just want to reiterate something that we talked about back in January when UCF rehired Scott Frost and West Virginia rehired Rich Rodriguez. I think it's the company line of Split Zone Duo that the reboot is not going to work long term. We did a pretty deep dive into the whole history.
We'll get to West Virginia. I might be changing my tune, but
we'll get to West Virginia. We did a pretty deep dive into the history of teams hiring their exes last winter, and the numbers are pretty overwhelming that it just almost never works. It's actually worked twice at Fresno State, of all places, but they might just have something special, agricultural out there. I don't think it's going to work long term, but that does not mean that it couldn't work short term. So let's talk about this season. Thorns first. Alex Grinch is the defensive coordinator. I'm still waiting for anyone to explain to me why this is happening ever at any school. Have been in the business for a while now. Still don't get it. Never been explained to me, including by people who have been at the places where he's been at the times that he's been there.
Got to be a good hang.
He must be a great hang, and that's fine. If so,
I don't want to have to be the Alex Grinch defender here, but like I think that part of this is like it is a different job being the DC at a middling school than one that like wants to win something. Like I think that they're just I think that what he did, because again, you know, like he had success before he came to Oklahoma, and I think that his Oklahoma tenure is, I think it's exaggerated a little bit how much they struggled.
I think the USC is really what you want. The USC
the USC was horrendous, but like I'm not going to sit here and say that like the defense was actually the problem in 18 or 19. Like it wasn't good enough, but like it wasn't, you know, I think that the other thing too is that in 2019, like people remember the Joe Burrow like dropping bombs, like that game so much, but like they were a pretty good unit for most of the year, even though obviously it didn't age well. And yes, obviously you should have made a change, but I'm not as down on this specific aspect as some other people, because the goal for Alex Grinch at UCF is to have a top 55 defense. It's not to have a top 25 defense. And I think that he's more equipped to do that than I think people give him credit for.
You know what? It's not unfair.
Right. But I do question, and Alex, we've talked about this before. Like, I do question, like, fundamentally, like, how well drilled is this defense? Like, I mean,
and I think that's one thing that I'm always going to be,
games about blocking and tackling.
One thing I'm going to be very curious about, and this is also like, again, like even a Lincoln Riley question, is I'm curious how they structure practice under Lincoln Riley, right? Like I'm curious, like how much, because you hear these stories, like I remember even being at Baylor, right, in the mid 2010s, maybe this color's part of it. And like, yeah, the defense struggled a lot of the time because like they had to like run against that offense, and the entire practice was structured around helping that offense, right? And like, so yeah, there was never an opportunity to learn how to, you know, block and tackle against.
But I would say this. I don't accept that, because when you're going up against a Lincoln Riley offense, one thing you are going up against is they run the ball, and they run the ball in a specific gap scheme that has for 40 years powered teams to championships. And that's why, for me, it's so beyond the pale that you can't tackle, that you can't be physical, that you can't fit the run. Like, I get that everybody sees Y cross and it looks sexy and Caleb Williams and blah, 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 blah. But the fundamentals, and I understand Lincoln Riley and USC have gotten worse.
But I think that there's still ways in that you can approach practice to help your defense. Like,
Sure,
because we've seen we've
I'm
seen the
saying,
other
Shehan,
situation, right?
Sean, what I'm saying is like this is not a situation where I'm letting them off the hook because of that. This is not a Baylor situation where you're running up against spread and shred Art Briles stuff.
But if you're not, for example, if you're structuring practice to where you're not tackling to the ground consistently, like that's something where it hurts your fundamentals, right? Like that's something. And again, if you're trying to protect this receiver and this quarterback and this running back, and you're not letting your defense tackle during practice, that's the sort of thing where I feel like maybe it starts to set you back. Now, again, I don't even know this for certain. Right? Like, but that's especially when they went from Oklahoma, where I think they had very physical offenses, to USC, where I don't think they have physical offenses anymore. And I'm hoping that changes. That's the sort of thing that I look at and I wonder, hey, man, like once you leave the nest a little bit, does Lincoln Riley... Anyway, this is a whole other conversation that could probably be had on another show, but I'm not as down on Alex Grinch as other people are.
Maybe we will have it on another show. Last year, their defense, each of the last 2 years, their defense was in the 50s in SP+. In fact, the last 4 years under Gus, it was between 47 and 59 on defense. So that's the sweet spot where they've been. See if they go up or down under Alex Grinch's tutelage and leadership. That's my thorn. I guess it's Shehan's butt. He's curious to see where it goes.
Let's not go. Well, actually, maybe on this roster, it's one of the most buddy things you can find.
So this is not. I'm glad you said that because I was not thinking that this is a great situation for this year as I was going over it. My bud. It's not long ago that I was receiving texts from the founder of a Speedway, Indiana-based college sports apparel company about Taven Jackson being the next great hope for the Indiana Hoosiers during those dark days at the end of the Tom Allen tenure. He was that guy not long ago. His brother played basketball there too. It did not work out. Curtis Rourke did work out. Taven Jackson came. Where did Taven Jackson spend? He was actually the backup for Indiana last year. So he was still in the program last year. He played a little bit when Curtis Rourke was hurt. But didn't work out. Now Taven Jackson is here to possibly be the quarterback for this team. But we'll see. They also added a couple interesting DBs from Syracuse who came with a former Syracuse Corners coach, Travis Fisher, who's on the staff. Jaden Bellamy is one of them. I'm intrigued by that. But I want to talk about quarterback. Taven Jackson is the bud. He might be a serious guy. It's a possibility that he could be a serious guy. I'm also not 100% sure that he's going to be the guy because Ja'Cory Brown, who's like a legit terror of a running quarterback, is here. And maybe knowing a thing about how Scott Frost's football career has gone as a player and coach, Scott Frost may prefer to just kind of try to bulldoze you and have Ja'Cory Brown at quarterback and Jaden Nixon, who was a real bright spot at running back for Western Michigan last year, and at running back, maybe they just try to do an option-ish run game that moves the ball that way. But in this new era, you know, if you're bringing in a quarterback like Taven Jackson, I'm guessing that wasn't for free. Probably want to see what you have in him. And the answer is maybe something, right? Maybe.
Yeah, and look, he started a game whenever
Rourke.
the quarter, when Rourke was hurt last year, played all right. Like I think that Taven Jackson has a little something. I would expect him to be the quarterback. I think that the combination of experience and talent is probably just a little higher there than anywhere else. But, you know, again, like part of the issue with this team is going to be, okay, well, like, can we not protect him at all? Can we not give him any weapons at all? Do we just need a guy back there who's going to run around because that's all we have the ability to do right now?
We're going to see. I'm not especially bullish on UCF this season, but at least they have two quarterbacks who are like kind of interesting, which is more than can be said for a lot of teams that I don't think are going to be that good this year. All right, Shehan, main event this week. You wrote a story about a month ago for CBS Sports that I really enjoyed, that I think a lot of people really enjoyed. You should read it. We'll put it in our show notes. It is titled West Texas Boom Inside Texas State's Just leave it in. Inside Texas Tech's bold all-in bet on NIL and the billionaire landman responsible. The word landman also having a moment, especially in the Paramount CBS ecosystem this year.
That's right.
But, I'm not going to say it wasn't part
to Paramount
of
Plus.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that it wasn't brought up during the pitch process. That's all I'm going to say about that.
He's a good company man. I understand that.
You have gotten yourself pretty deep inside the beast here of Texas Tech's effort to get good at football by backing up the Brinks truck. We can keep you out of the format here. You can give us a rosebud thorn if you want, but tell us what you've learned about the Red Raiders.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? And to just kind of get into it a little bit, I mean, I think that there's an obvious kind of lazy way to tell the story here, right? Which is that, hey, Texas Tech got a rich booster and is spending a ton of money. And that is absolutely the case. But I was kind of more interested in getting into the how and why of it. And so there's two pieces of this. One, back in July 2024, Cody Campbell, who's obviously now a famous name in college football, their top booster, head of their board, billionaire, all this sort of stuff, he calls a meeting with their athletic director, their head coach, their general manager, and another administrator. And he says, look, we don't know how long this completely unfettered market is going to last. And so let's try to be ready to maximize this offseason more than anybody else. And again, this is before the season, by the way. So what they do is they essentially come up with a plan of how they're going to attack the portal. And they plan for probably over 100 players. And like, hey, if this kid enters the portal, he would fit this role. He would fit this need. Some of them came true. I know that one that was brought up was like Mike Green, the edge at Marshall, was one who had been a target. He ended up breaking out, being an NFL draft pick instead. He was taken off the board. But there were other guys, guys like Romello Height at Georgia Tech, who they did all their homework on, they did all the vetting of, they put evaluation to him. So when he was ready to jump, they were able to jump on him and be ready before anybody else. And through this strategy and through, yes, the amount of money that they threw at it, they brought in the number 2 transfer class in the country. They brought in 4 of the top 50 players in the transfer portal rankings. It actually might have been 5 after David Bailey got added, the transfer from Stanford.
I was going to say, that's a guy who just fell in their lap because of the Troy Taylor stuff.
Yep. No, he wasn't going to transfer initially. And then when he did, like, it was a literal everybody wanted him, everybody wanted him situation.
Dude, big year for Texas Tech transfers from Stanford. Big year.
Yeah,
I know.
I did ask if him and Nigel Kennedy had a relationship. He said no, but I loved, obviously watching her in the softball World Series. But so they put together this roster because they knew that House might be coming too. Because they knew that there might be some level of rules and guardrails starting in the next year. So obviously they front-loaded their contracts in their roster. They paid out a ton of it so that they'd have this roster at this time. And the biggest thing that they've said is, in this moment, like, we have almost everything. We've got resource. We're going to be sharing at the highest rev share level whenever it's available to us. We've got a coaching staff that we feel good about, an administration that we feel good about. They have facilities. They just opened a brand new facility in the last year. That's pretty astonishing, to be frank. The thing that we don't have at all is we don't have any trophies to show for it.
None.
And like, this is the moment. Like, the expectation is very real. They will view this as a failure if they are not playing for the Big 12 this year. Now, like, winning, again, that's obviously always, there's a bounce of a ball, all this sort of stuff, right? But like, they want to be right there in the position to have a breakout season, to be in the 10-win conversation, to be in the Big 12 championship game, to be in the playoff conversation. And they know that, like, this is their chance to do it. Because if they go 8-4 this year, they're not going to be able to the same way throw out all the money in the world at the next round of transfers.
Yeah.
And so
both because of regulation and because if it doesn't work the first time, it's harder to have your hand out to the people who would give you the money the second time.
Yeah, and I will say too,
it's a fair expectation to say the first week in December you better be in Jerry World if you're going to talk about how you spent, if you're going to be on the record about an amount of money that you spent and telling every Tom, Dick, and Harry, not just Shehan, who we love, that you're spending all this money.
They told it better to me, to be clear.
Of course. You don't get to do that and then back away from expectations or make a bunch of excuses if halfway through November you're 4-3. Like, that's not how this works. So but I will say this, Sean, does it give you pause that they did all of this in a year where the portal was relatively down? But on the flip side, I would say it's optimistic that a lot of their biggest outlay was along the trenches, which is not sexy, but that is how you win.
Well, and that's the thing too, right? And, it's a story of resource, but it's a story of preparation too. And I talked to their general manager, James Blanchard, and he pointed a lot to the Philadelphia Eagles and said they won because they just beat everybody up.
Yeah,
and
the team that looked at the best defense in college football over the last 5 years and was like, hey, we'll just take guys from that team every year.
And so it was a very explicit decision, because let's say, for example, they spend, X amount of, they spend $20 million in the portal, but like they spend 6 on a quarterback and 4 on, like, I think that there's a way that they could have spent a ton of money and not necessarily helped themselves on the football side of things all that much. Like, yeah, it's cool to have a good quarterback and all that, but like, it's only, if you don't have the trenches, like, you're probably not winning in that same way. And like, they viewed it as, we're going to raise our floor much higher. They won 6 one-score games last year, and the goal is to not be in that many one-score games this year. Is that, hey, there are 3 or 4 teams that are going to be able to hang with us, no question about it, on our schedule. Let's try to lessen the opportunity for everybody else to contend with us. And they brought in some great players. We mentioned David Bailey, Romello Height, Hunter Sampson on the offensive line, Howard Sampson, on the offensive line. So they want to build through the trenches. I had a lot of people ask me, like, well, then why did they just roll with their pretty good but not great quarterback in Baron Morton? And it's that, well, because they wanted to build everything around him.
Shehan, this is the one thing that it drives me crazy about, like, evaluation about a team like Texas Tech. It's when, again, I just said it, like, down portal year, but the thing that they spent the money on was on the trenches, right? It's like everybody knows that the SEC at the top end won a ton of games because they had the biggest people, right? It is absolutely no secret. But then other teams try to do, Michigan wins a national championship like that. It's not very sexy, but you have the best offensive line in college football. Like, when you go in the trenches and you build your team in the trenches, it's not sexy. It does not get a lot of headlines. But it is how you build.
That's why they had to create their headlines.
Right. And
it's
that's
interesting.
why I give them a lot of credit for the way that they've gone about their business here.
No, it's very disciplined, because, like, again, and I think that this team obviously is doing a really good job in the trench as well. But it's like, they didn't do the Miami thing. They didn't say, hey, we're going to, spend X amount of money on Carson Beck to get this top line guy, right? Like, that's not what they did. And I think that, one of the reasons, frankly, right, like, why I love this show, and I think a lot of the listeners of the show love the show, is that it's really easy in a sport this big for people to just be like, is their quarterback good? Bet they're going to be good. Is their quarterback good? Bet they're going to be good.
Stetson Bennett has 2 national championships, and Will Howard just won a title. All right,
like, God bless Will Howard.
You got to have the super friends around you.
That's my quarterback. Well, let him. That's my quarterback.
Congratulations.
You got to have the super friends around you to go about your business that way.
Absolutely.
But it's not like the NFL it's not quite like the NFL where you really do have to have Jalen Hurts aside. You really do have to have, best quarterback of all time to win a championship. You can do it with a high floor quarterback.
Right.
You can.
Well, and I think that the other thing too, right, is like, because I've had people, I go on national shows and people are like, do you think they're going to be national title contenders? And I'm like, that's nobody's like thought around. Like they're not competing with 2024 Ohio State, right? Like, that's not what they're trying to do. A big part of this moment and the strategy too is, no, we're trying to establish ourselves in the Big 12. We're trying to do things that other Big 12 schools maybe can't compete with. That when we play UCF, it's not a conversation of, did we drop the best ball plays? They just can't hang with us. Like, they literally can't physically hang with us. That's harder to do. And actually, ESPN wrote a great story about the mechanics of how Tech did their thing a little bit earlier. I think it was Max Olson who wrote it. And one thing that James Blanchard said to him was essentially like, yeah, Ole Miss tried it, and yeah, it worked to an extent, but like also, but like Ole Miss building a fantastic defensive line wasn't super unusual in the SEC. Like there are other teams in
Mississippi,
the SEC,
for God's sakes. You could trip over a guy who's 320.
Right. And so, you bring in this tremendous defensive line class, and they had a, top 5-10 defensive line in college football, but like the other top 5-10 defensive lines in college football were also in the SEC. Whereas in the Big 12, like nobody is touching Texas Tech's pass rush this year. And that's the idea, is let's raise our floor up as high as we possibly can so that 8 teams on our schedule can't even compete against us. And then we'll try to split our games and, the really competitive ones. And if we play 4 competitive games and we win 2 of them, that's 10 wins and we're maybe in Arlington.
So, Shehan, I gather that the pass rush is an obvious rose.
Yes.
It's still, I'm not even trying to be a dickhead here, but it's still Texas Tech. There has to be, money can plug a lot of holes, but what are you worried about thorn-wise?
Well, it's interesting. They replaced both coordinators this year. Like they are running 2 pretty new systems. Sheil Wood coming over from Houston at defensive coordinator, had a great unit. We'll get to Houston in a second. And Mac Leftwich, first year at a power conference ever as an offensive coordinator. Both these guys are very young, frankly, right? Like Mac Leftwich is 30. And like, so it's going to be a quick transition process that needs to take place to, 1, have a new system be put in on both sides of the ball, and 2, have a new roster to try to plug all those holes as well. So I do think that there could be some road bumps along the way, just in terms of trying to get everything to work. And I mentioned, like, I don't think that the passing game that they have is incredibly special. Like, obviously, we mentioned Baron Morton. He was a good, not great quarterback in the Big 12 last year. I think receiver, they're in good shape, but I don't think that they have heavy hitters necessarily. And so like there are ways that there could be speed bumps, but it's more about, can you survive those? And I think that Texas Tech in this moment is better equipped to handle them than they've ever been.
They also do get a little bit of time before, like, betting into the schedule, right? They have an FCS opponent. I just pulled it up. The FCS opponent, Kent State. They'll blow those 2 teams out, and then
careful on the FCS thing. Almost lost to Abilene last year,
guys. They're going to beat
Arkansas
changed.
Pine
Bluff.
That's the reason that you bring these guys in.
They are going to beat Arkansas Pine Bluff by 50.
Right.
They should beat Kent State by 50. And quite frankly, if they are who we think they are, they should be. They should dispatch Oregon State quite comfortably. That's like, I'm not going to say that's a measuring stick, because they're not going to be measured against Oregon State over the long tail of their season. But for a team who has never been to a Big 12 championship game, that's where it starts. If you're going to build this roster like this and talk about how you built this roster like this, you dispatch a team that you will probably be a 10-point favorite over at home.
If you want to be like Texas Tech and spend money for a worthwhile return on investment in college football, may I suggest that you go to homefieldapparel.com and check out the tremendous catalog of Big 12 and other collections that they've got there for teams all over college football. Homefieldapparel.com. You can use the promo code SZD20 for 20% off your first order. And while we can't guarantee that it'll work at Texas Tech, we think it might. And I can tell you that the shirts are going to be extremely comfortable and look really good at Homefield. Thanks so much to Homefield for your support of this program. Richard, you're telling me that you're optimistic about West Virginia in a way that you weren't back in the winter?
Yeah, guys, 52 transfers into this, including 11 new offensive linemen. Rich Rodriguez, you absolute madman. I think this is going to be fun, because I think they are. I think we're going to get back to business as usual at West Virginia. Jaheim White is going to go crazy this year. Absolutely crazy. This is a back-to-back 800-yard rusher for West Virginia, or excuse me, for Rich Rod, I should say. And I think that he comes into this in this system, which works everywhere. All right. Zone read, still getting the job done. Got it done at Jack State, got it done for a cup of coffee there at Arizona before things got not so great. And then obviously at, don't ask Michigan, but at West Virginia back in the day, it was pretty damn good. I'm in Cam Vaughn in at wide receiver as well. Those are my 2 roses. He comes from Jax, with Rich Rod, an absolute problem and an explosive threat at wide receiver. You're getting an absolute mystery box on this roster because of how much they are bringing in, because of how much. I think they brought in like 20 guys post spring. Like there's we really have like no idea, to be honest with you, how this is going to look. That's why I didn't even really like pick a thorn, because and to call these anything besides White and Vaughn like bona fide roses, I don't even know. I'm kind of rolling the conceit of the show
fine.
here into all three different things, just because you have this is a Colorado level of turnover on this roster. But I am quite curious.
I'm fine just waiting and seeing. I do like that Pat White is back there.
And Noel Devine.
Yeah.
And Noel Devine.
Yes.
Yeah. We are getting old. We're getting old. I think the thing that's going to be interesting to me, medium and long term, about West Virginia is that, like, I remember talking to one like Hall of Fame coach a couple years ago, and he was like, "Man, year 1, 2, 3, they hate me, and year 4, they love me because they know that I know what I'm doing and they know the system." And like Rich Rod isn't to that extent, but like that's kind of how he's done things in the past. Where like year 3, year 4, you get it, you get why he's being like this, you learn how to deal with. But like, guys can leave after year 1 now, right? Like guys can leave immediately if they don't like how they're being treated, how tough things are, whatever it is. I'm curious to kind of see if they figure out a player acquisition strategy and retention strategy that works well for them. But I think to emphasize how serious that West Virginia seems to be about it, I mean, getting Zach Alley from Oklahoma as defensive coordinator, like that is a swing.
He's
that is
Brent Venables' protege, started with Brent at Clemson, was with Rich Rodriguez at Jax.
Yep. And like, that's as good as it gets, right? Like that's as good a hire as you can make at West Virginia to lead your defense. And I think that my hope, and I kind of talked to Rich Rod about this, was like, do you use Pat White, Noel Devine, Zach Alley, guys like that to say, hey, we know that Rich Rod is a crazy person, but like, let's try to bridge the gap here. Let's try to explain.
We're cool.
Yeah. Don't worry. We know that he's like a lot to work with and a lot to be around, but here's what he's trying to do here. And we are proof of it. That's my hope. And I agree. I left Big 12 Media Days feeling much more optimistic about Rich Rod coming back than I did the situation at UCF.
This is the opposite of an endorsement. Well, or I'll just say it's certainly not an endorsement. This is just me purveying information to you all, by the way. Insofar as the most important media operator in college football, other than Splits on Duo and CBS Sports,
of course,
is ESPN, and whatever ESPN decides is going to drive coverage. McAfee is going to make sure that the whole world hears a lot about Rich Rodriguez in West Virginia all the time this year. You should be prepared for that. You're going to get a heavy dosage of this, whether you want it or not. You're going to become extremely familiar with McAfee's old college coach and the rebuild that he's attempting at West Virginia. It's just going to be driving the day a lot of the time on the 4-letter network. Shehan, the TCU Horned Frogs, are we back?
You know what's funny about it is I've talked to Sonny Dykes plenty of times, and one thing that he's kind of upfront about is like, yeah, it's awesome that we went to the national title game in year 1, but it kind of skewed everybody's perception of what we're doing here in some ways. And the way that he views it, and the way that he was very open about it at Big 12 Media Days, is we viewed, 23 as kind of our year 1, 24 is our year 2, and this is our culmination year. I don't think people realize that they won 9 games last year. I don't think that they realize how much of the roster is now Sonny Dykes guys and have developed, and how many good players they've got at this point. And so to start with my Rose, Josh Hoover, I think, is one of the more underrated quarterbacks in college football. Now,
Yes.
I will give the caveat, they have to replace 2 awesome NFL receivers in Savion Williams and Jack Besh. But like, he just he can put the ball anywhere, man. Like, he's super accurate. He's super decisive. He dealt with turnover issues, but a big part of that was, I think, because he just had to do everything for this team last year, but he was able to do it. And, people around TCU have kind of said, like, this is one of the best quarterbacks from a pure throwing perspective that we've had here in a very long time. Like, you're going back to the Trevon Boykins and the Andy Daltons. Even like, Max Duggan was a great player, but he was not a thrower like this. And they feel like it gives them a chance to be pretty special. My butt, though, is like Andy Avalos has done a great job with that defense since coming over from Boise State. Like he has done a really, really good job with the defense. I mentioned Hoover, of course, but like the best player on the roster might be Bud Clark at safety. Like he is a big time player in the old school TCU type of safety secondary mold. And they found something that works pretty well for them, I think, on that side of the ball. They return a tremendous amount of production, at every level of the defense as well. Dude. And I think that if things click for them, this could be one of the better defenses in the conference.
I just realized how long Bud Clark's been there. Bud Clark, I was correct in thinking about that. Bud Clark had one of the pick sixes against Michigan in the Fiesta Bowl. Was it one? Did they have two in that game? I forget. Anyway, he had the pick six. I think they might add two. He's been there since 2020, and he has not transferred, which rare breed in this day and age.
No, and he really believes in what they're doing, of course. Sonny was like, look, I think he could have gone to the draft last year. He decided he had more that he wanted to work on. He came back. I think that's a big retention for him. A lot of the time you look at TCU culmination seasons, it's, obviously this was under Gary Moore, but like, it's the years that they have great players in the secondary, when they have like great, tremendous leaders like Trey Hodges-Tomlinson or Trevon Moehrig or Jason Verrett, guys like that over the past couple of years. I think that Bud Clark might be that guy this year for Sonny's team. The thorn for me is like this team was freaking horrendous at running the ball last year. Like I mentioned that Josh Hoover had a lot asked of him. It's because their running game gave them very little. And I think it had more to do, frankly, with interior blocking issues. Like they just were not a very good interior blocking group. And I'm not sure if they've fixed it. They've got some good players who I think that, because again, I don't think that this is necessarily a running back issue, but they bring in a transfer from UTSA who is really good. They bring back, some returners at the position. Trent Battle was a transfer who came in a year or two ago. So like, I think they have talent at the running back position, but if you can't run on the interior in this day and age, you're just not going to be a special offense anymore. And if they don't figure that out, that I think could be a legitimately fatal flaw, just like it was last season, frankly.
I hope that they figure it out, because it would be a shame to waste Max Hoover, who I agree with you is really good.
Josh Hoover.
What did I? Oh, sorry. Jeez, Max.
You said,
my God. You know what? Yeah. I make fact errors. Max Duggan is not Josh Hoover. Excuse me. I strive to correct fact errors when I make them on this show, including, by the way, in our Mac preview earlier this week. It was brought to my attention that I referred to 2019 as during the Obama administration. That's not correct, as a matter of fact. That administration ended in January of 2017. But I think you all get it, right? I mean, time is just kind of... I'm losing it a little bit. Anyway, but we're going to leave it in. Apologies to Josh Hoover and Max Duggan and Trevon Boykin and anyone else who I have offended in this.
Casey Paul Hall. We can just keep naming off TC quarterbacks.
So I have Kansas here. Kansas is an interesting team because I think I think at least two of the three of us, maybe all of us, were pretty excited about Kansas last year. It didn't start well. Jalen Daniels had problems giving the ball to the other team at the beginning of the year, and that bit them in several games. But by the end of the year, they were definitely one of the best teams in the Big 12 and actually had a chance to sneak into a bowl game on the last weekend of the season, though they didn't get that done. My rose is kind of a three-parter. Jalen Daniels remains in college football playing for them. Good. I think you feel good about that. They have some degree, hopefully, of carryover from the end of last season when they were a much better team than they were at the beginning. And, underrated, they get to play in their own stadium, their renovated stadium this year, which I bet juices attendance, provides some actual tangible excitement around this program that just can't be there when you're playing in a half-empty or whatever Arrowhead. I think this just seems like a pretty exciting moment to be a Kansas football fan or player or coach. And you can tell a pretty positive story about where they are going into the year. My bud, also pretty positive. It seems like the defensive front could be a big edge for them. Dean Miller, DJ Withers, and Endon a tackle had a combined 9 sacks for them last year. They are both back. And pretty quietly, last year, they had a much better defense than they did in the first couple years under Lance Leipold. The last 2 years, they've been a lot better. At the beginning, they were sort of, they're figuring things out on offense, but they couldn't stop anybody. You might remember that from a few years ago when things kind of fell apart for them. I think they might be in a significantly better place. So I believe they have a new play caller on the defensive side of the ball this year. Thorn, anyone notice that? Haven't heard a ton about this. Jalen Daniels had an off-season knee procedure. Their starting center, Bryce Foster, second team All Big 12 last year, had a surgery, a cleanup surgery it was described as over the offseason, and is in the supposed to be good for week 0 when they play Fresno State bucket. I sure hope that maybe their 2 most important players on offense aren't both hurt when they start the season. That would be bad.
Well, I'm not trying to make light of this, but like Jalen Daniels, that's the problem with Jalen Daniels. He has been unable to stay healthy since really he absolutely exploded on the scene in the beginning of that first year that he had.
Yeah, and maybe it explains some of the challenges, especially early last year. So maybe you can turn it into a positive story about where they're going. But I don't think you can be completely confident that all of their most important players are going into the year healthy. And granted, things are going to happen in fall camp. It's just part of the deal. But, that gives you a little bit of pause. Like, you certainly hope, especially that your great quarterback, who is at full strength. We'll see. Shehan, you are into the Houston Cougars this year. Richard has said the Houston voucher is canceled. Where are you on this?
The Houston voucher, yes. The Houston voucher is canceled.
I'm into them. I think that in the second half of the year, they were way friskier than people realize. And that's where I'm going to start with my Rose. Like, their defense last year was kind of good, which was not what I expected. 1, with Dana Holgerson leaving a roster, and 2, with Willie Fritz, who's more of an offensive coach, coming in. But, like, they shut some teams down. They put some guys in some tough situations. Now, I mentioned, obviously, that Houston is still figuring things out on the rev share front, and they lost a couple of key defensive people, including their coordinator, Shill Wood, like I mentioned. But, and Richard, maybe you can speak this a little more. They bring in Austin Armstrong from Florida, who, they feel good about. But, he's not Shill Wood.
Yeah, I mean, they may feel good about it. I think Florida fans feel pretty good that he's not there anymore. I think Austin Armstrong is a very talented and bright young coach who I think needed to learn a little bit about play calling. And as Ron Roberts took things over last year in Gainesville, obviously the defense got more solid. Willie Fritz, I don't want to say taking a flyer on him, but Willie Fritz adding him, we'll see how Austin Armstrong has matured as a play caller.
Yeah, just to speak to them defensively for a second. So they go 2-3 in their last 5 games, but they beat Utah. Utah's offense isn't very good, but hold them to 14 points. They beat Kansas State, who is very good at offense, held them to 19 points. Arizona they struggled against, but then held Baylor to only 20 points when they were really rolling, and then played BYU within 30-18. So like this is a team and a defense that I think has a chance to have some upside. But the bud has to be the addition of Connor Wegman from Texas A&M. Now, look, he's not the 5-star that he was billed. Like, that is painfully clear. And also, he's struggled with injury. So I think getting out of the SEC is probably a good thing physically for him. He's not going to be hit exactly the same way in this conference. And they are really excited about what they have there. He's somebody who's from the Houston area, went to Bridgeland High School. They think that he gives them more as a runner than people realize, but more of a designed runner than a scrambler. But the thorn for me a little bit is like, I don't know if they have the weapons around him to be good right now. Now, I think that they'll be fine, but, Mekhi Muse was a key receiver for them. Stephon Johnson is probably that one dude that they have at receiver. But, like, other than that, again, they brought in Dean Connors from Rice at running back. He's a solid player, but that's a big jump in competition. They just don't have proven skill guys right now, and especially with an offensive line that should be better, but was also a little revamped. That's probably the one thing that's keeping them from being seriously competitive, but I expect them to be back in a bowl. And I think that, again, Willie Fritz is a builder, and I think that he's building in the right direction.
And with him, it sometimes takes a few years. So even if they are only okay this year, I think I'd still feel reasonably good about where they are going into 2026, as long as it doesn't go backwards from the end of last year. I got Arizona. This is one of the most interesting teams in the league to me this year. Somewhat complimentary, somewhat not. We'll talk about it. I think my rose is that they have reinforcements coming in Brent Brennan's second year on the offensive line, which was so bad last year and basically ruined their debut season in the Big 12. 7 transfers in the offensive line, most of them with at least some starting experience. Will it work? Heaven only knows, but they have loaded up with guys who at least have some experience, have played at other schools. They actually moved one of their defensive tackles to guard, and it seems like he might play. So they're trying things to try to figure out how to block it up. I really like Ismail Mahdi, the running back from Texas State, who is in this program now. Not clear how much of the carry share he's going to get, but I bet it becomes more as the season goes. I think he's a good player. My bud, and Shehan, I'll be very curious for your read about this. This is not an exact science or a thing that I would do with every team, because it could lead you very far astray. But sometimes to get a sense of what a coach thinks of his team, I like to take a look at who they bring to media days and who the coach seems to be talking about a lot.
Really get into trouble doing that.
You can get into trouble doing that. I'm aware that you can get into trouble doing it. I'm only doing it once this year.
Yeah, only once. We're the Big 12.
You got to be careful with this for obvious reasons. But I think last year, everyone knows that the excitement around Arizona was with their offense. It was Noah Fafita, it was Teteroa McMillan, the two guys that stayed after Jed Fish left Washington and were supposed to be the foundation of a really good team. And, you know, McMillan's a great player. He was a top 10 pick, whatever. We all understand that. But pretty lousy year, largely because of the offensive line. And Fafita had a rough kind of decline. This year, of the guys that they brought to Frisco, there were 6 of them. 4 of them play defense, including 3 DBs specifically. It just does feel like the leaders of this team, for the most part, are on defense. Trey Smith, who had like 7 sacks last year after coming over from San Jose State. Arizona, by the way, one of many teams that has found a lot of success going to the portal well from Mountain West trench players. Arkansas did last year as well. Oregon's trying to do it this year. There's good work to be gotten from that conference. Genesis Smith, very good safety, a lot of PBUs, TFLs. Arizona might think that the strength of their team is now defense, and I think they might be right.
No, I think that you're right. And, you know, to even circle back a little bit, like, I think that Brent Brennan, the biggest thing that he said was, I want to find guys who want to be here and who are committed to this. Because I think last year, like, there was such kind of this internal battle of trying to be Jed Fish while trying to also be Brent Brennan and trying to keep some of the guys who are here happy. I think that what bringing those guys to Media Day says a lot too is these are guys who are committed to our program. These are guys who we feel like have bought in. And I do agree. A lot of it, I think, is going to be on the defensive side of the ball. You know, when you look at Brent Brennan's teams over the years, like, they do tend to, you know, they tend to be really good at quarterback. They tend to be really good at running back, and they tend to be physical on defense. And I think that it just didn't feel like that last year. And, you know, I'm not source enough to know, like, with some of these coordinator hires, what was pushed on him versus what he got the chance to do. But I think in year 2, you see him make some decisions and hire some guys that really make sense for what he wants to be. And I do think that this team is going to be defensive led. I think that it's going to be a little bit more structured. Last year, you know, just to touch on the offense, and obviously we'll get to it a little more in a second, like, I think he felt like, look, you know, Dino Babers was sort of a headlining hire for us as offensive coordinator, but he ran a very downfield system, and we're moving to an air raid this year in a way that maybe fits the roster a little better. So I left feeling a little better about them than I did before. And I think that the defense is one of the biggest reasons to feel excited about that.
I would agree. This is my thorn-ish, but maybe it kind of verges on a bud, is that I really don't know what to make of Fafita this year. On the one hand, I think they're going to block better because they can't block worse. On the other hand, there is not another Teteroa McMillan walking through that door. But on the third hand, they made some interesting ads, wide receiver-wise. Chris Hudson, formerly of Oregon, had a mini breakout at Wazoo last year. He's here. Javen Watley from Chattanooga. You know, we love an FCS receiver. Big numbers there. He's here. You know, there's enough here for me to be kind of excited that he might get back Fafita might to where he was, but also I'm not sure about it. And there is an element of the upside of this team is kind of tied to his upside. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if we've already seen the best of him or not.
I think we have.
I think we've seen the best of him, but I think that last year was not the best of him, and
No,
I think
well,
we'll get
yeah.
something a little. Yeah, so I think we'll see something in between this year, especially like I think the decision to bring in an air raid offensive coordinator was to try to give him as much comfort as possible, because again, like he is just not a veer and shoot downfield kind of guy.
No, it's going to be a new world for him this year, and not necessarily, I don't know. There's things here that are interesting and there's things here that are concerning. Richard, we have saved possibly the greatest subject of debate in this league this year for last.
I'm so in on Utah. I'm so in on this Utah team after giving it some study and digging kind of deep on it. I know we talked about it in off-season vibe checks. We talked about it in our kind of coach hot seat, not hot seat, but you know, basically whether coach is going to be here next year rankings episode that we did a few weeks ago, because Kyle Whittingham is your, you know, consistent retirement candidate, especially from Agent World, who see that coming. But I look at Jason Beckett, offensive coordinator. I look at Devin Dampier at quarterback. I look at 10 offensive linemen back. Spencer Fenno is a first-round pick at right tackle. Caleb Lomo probably is on the other side at tackle. They are importing the best rushing offense outside of a service academy last year. You're telling me that's not going to work for Utah? I've seen this movie before. Like, this is finally the thing where you say, oh, well, you slept on Utah, and there they are playing really well. They are going to struggle in the passing game relative. I want to be clear about that. That is an issue. That is the thorn. But I look at this offense, and I think this is the way they want to do business. This is the way they want to control games physically. We talked about that Texas Tech schedule. They get Utah, I believe it's week 4, week 5. That's when it turns up. That's when that is also when we figure out, okay, you got the measuring stick of if you're a good team or in the weight class. Now we've got will you trip over the true stumbling block in your league? Because Utah is going to be a tough out. Utah is not going to struggle, I think, in the way that they have the last few years, because they are congealing right now around a positive identity, and the identity certainly that Kyle Whittingham wants. Does the defense lose a ton? Yeah. But last year they ended up playing like 25 different players, and they were a top 20 defense in college football. They were tremendous success rate defense. Did give up some big plays, but tremendous from an efficiency standpoint. I'm here for it. I'm in.
So I do want to clarify though, like, what do you mean by in? Because I think that Utah is going to be a very resurgent team. I've been shocked to see that Vegas in a lot of places has them number 1 in the conference right now.
Yeah, I don't know about Big 12 championship. Like, I'm not talking about that.
That's the bar that Vegas is setting for them right now.
And that's fine. But I will say I can see that. Like, when I look at how they're trying to structure this thing, I understand how you see going from 2-7 in the league, for instance, last year, 2-8, whatever it was, to and 5-7 overall, to being a double-digit win team. Like, that leap to me is not that's not out of nowhere to me.
No, I agree. So I view them as, you know, again, I talk about the idea of floors. I think this is a much higher floor team than it's been the last 3 years with this new offense, because like, you look what they did last year and even the year before that wasn't a bad offense. It was one of the worst offenses in the entire sport. And while I don't know if they're going to be exactly as good on defense, they will be extremely good on defense. I mean, this is just what they do there. The sort of ceiling raiser for me, and the dynamic I'm not sure about, is, like you said, can Devin Dampier pass at this level? Now, he doesn't need to for them to be pretty good, for them to be an 8-win type team. If they want to be an 11-win type team, I think he's got to pass at a decent level. Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting. I asked a lot of people around the program, the past couple of weeks, like, what have you seen? And they feel like, okay, well, like, yes, he was a 12-12 touchdown to interception ratio guy last year, but like did not have a lot to work with other than Caleb Medford, who obviously we mentioned transferred to Kansas State. And on top of that, like, he is just a run around type of guy because like they couldn't block for him. I think that he was only sacked 5 times last year, which is a crazy number, just an insane number. So the question for me is going to be, okay, when he does drop back to pass to an extent, is he any threat there? If he's zero threat there, again, this is a 7-8, like, good team. But if he's good, if he's a 65% completion guy, keeps his turnovers down, like, yeah, there is the upside there to be in the conversation. I reiterate, don't see what Vegas is seeing in terms of them being a conference favorite, but I think that this probably is a top 5 team in the Big 12 this year.
I was going to say
if that works.
I think I would have them somewhere in the 3 to 5 range of confidence that they'll be good.
Wait, 3 to 5 as in 3rd to 5th in the league? Or
yeah, like I think that I'm guessing that I'm going to probably pick Baylor or Texas Tech or Arizona State to win the league. And I would say that Utah's like right after them in how I'm feeling as I listen to this preview. And I do my own book reports for the teams that I had. That's about how I feel about Utah.
Yeah, okay, I see. Yes, okay. Can Utah be firmly the 3rd best team in the Big 12? I think so.
Yeah, I would say so. All right. Well, we're gonna see. And if look, it wouldn't be the first time that some of us have underestimated Utah.
Right,
and I'm sure if we do, we'll hear about it ad nauseum.
I don't even know that that's an underestimate. Like,
it's a fair thing for a team that wasn't very good last year.
Like, I think Texas Tech is a better football team than them. And I think Arizona State is a better football team than them coming into the season. I cannot sit here and say any other team in this league is definitively better than them. I do not feel more confident about any other team in this league than the other 2 that I just stated.
I agree. Definitively hard to say. I think Baylor might be, but we're aligned. I think we have consensus. Utah, by the way, may well be the prettiest state I have ever driven in. Makes me think about road trips, which I like to take with the help of our partners at Nokian Tires. There is nothing like being on a set of tires you know you can rely on when you are driving in a pretty place, and Utah is one of the prettiest that we've got in this country. If you have any good road trip ideas for this college football season, or any other time of the year, really, you should go to NokianTires.com. That's tires with a Y /SCD, NokianTires.com/SZD, and submit your own road trip ideas or your actual plans. You will be entered in a monthly drawing for Split Zone Duo listeners to win a free set of tires. Thank you so much to Nokian Tires for your support of this program. Couple superlatives. Richard, you've already done the preseason minority coach of the week of the year in an interesting schematic spot. We got to award the SCD preseason dude of the year award. I'm taking David Bailey, the tech edge that we talked about. I just think he's very high floor. The chances that he's anything other than a game-wrecking pass rusher for them, if he's healthy, are really low. And I think it's going to break some brains for people to realize that Texas Tech has like a defensive stud like this in a year where people are actually paying attention to them. People aren't going to be used to seeing Texas Tech with a defender like that. Though I think they did have that edge rusher who was picked, like 4th or 5th. Yeah, like 4 or 5 years ago. But he wasn't like a massive college star. He was like a guy the NFL loved, and he went into the NFL. Yeah,
I'll go with, to take us back to Utah. Spencer Fano, I think, is like maybe the best player in the conference this year. And yeah, obviously in terms of being a dude, like he's not going to be carrying the ball or getting up the quarterback, but I think that he is somebody who's going to be so important to Utah bulldozing. Like him and the combination of him and Caleb Lomu, like, is that the best tackle combo in college football? Like, I think it has a really good case to be, if nothing else. Like you said, I think that Fano is basically a first-round pick, and Lomu could be a first-round pick. But the energy that he gives them up front, I think, is a huge part of the reason why Utah's floor is just so much higher than what it's been in years past.
I'm taking Jaheim White. I think running game go Burr in that offense. I'm here for it. I'm taking Jaheim White, West Virginia running back.
Low-key cool game of the year. And I would point out that almost any Big 12 game kind of qualifies for this now, because basically the purpose of this is don't just pick like the blue bloods, and the Big 12 just has a lot of parity right now. So like there's no game is ineligible to be the lower key cool game of the year in the Big 12. Has enough time passed that Baylor TCU though is low key cool? It's week 8 in Fort
that
Worth.
is not Baylor TCU is not a low key game.
Okay, it's been a long time since the heyday of that, but okay, fine. Then I will resort to Colorado at Utah, week 10. That's Colorado off a bye, Utah off what is always an exhausting and very physical slugfest in the Holy War.
Yeah, I'm going with Baylor too. I'm going Baylor Auburn, and maybe that's not a low key enough game. Frankly, it's kind of hard in this conference because everybody could be interesting all the time.
Yeah.
And so, but I think that Baylor Auburn isn't just like a low key. Like I think that this might be like one of the best games of the year in the Big 12, because I think that if Baylor wins this game, like it just sets up the conference in such an important way. And you've got so many dynamics coming in with, with Baylor and Auburn both looking to kind of have their breakout moment and breakout season. You have, of course, like the level of receivers in that game, the level of quarterbacks in that game. Like I think that it's going to be a really high profile game. And I think that it adds to the dynamic as well, that it's going to be on a Friday when potentially a lot of people will be watching.
The tailspin that Auburn is going to be sent in if Baylor like beats their ass in that game is going to be.
Yeah, I'll be down there. I'll get to enjoy whatever comes out of it.
Very, very funny. I have taken Colorado Texas Tech, a week 1 game. You don't think Georgia Tech wants to go in there and put a licking on Colorado? That is going to be as motivated a Georgia Tech team as you will find to go in there and win that game for reasons. Colorado, I think.
Can you walk out the subtext here a little bit?
The subtext is I love the culture clash between Brent Key and the Georgia Tech culture.
Okay,
and Dion and that culture.
Everyone understands what you're saying. All right.
Yeah.
Absolute classic culture clash in college football.
Absolutely.
Of team, of blue collar, of blue collar versus Louis luggage. Like it's going to be hilarious to see those two teams play, and they will finally avenge. What was it? 1991. What was the year they split the national championship?
I think it's that year. Yeah, I think it's
91.
that year.
Yeah.
What Richard is saying, just to be clear, is that you have a very black culture and city in Atlanta going to Boulder, Colorado, a much wider place, obviously, and the dynamics between those two locales.
Famously black Georgia Tech. Absolutely.
All right. One of my favorites to close us out, coach who's not going to be here next year because he's fired, retired, takes a new job.
I hemmed and hawed on this a lot. I think I'm actually going to end up on Gundy. I just kind of think Gundy may. I finally have come to the realization that I think Gundy may just throw his hands up at the end of the season and just be like, I had a good run.
Well, last year you had Dion, and no, he did not. Last year, I kind of hedged and hemmed and hawed with either Kalani Sitake or Dave Aranda, which also nope and nope. So shows you what we know about how these things are going to go. But Shehan?
Yeah. I wish that I had a better answer for this, but like I really think that this is it for Kyle Whittingham.
That's right.
Like I really, really think this is it. I think if last year they win the league, I think last year is it for Kyle Whittingham. But he's not leaving on 5-7, right?
He said that. Didn't
that.
he like say that?
He did say that, which only emboldened me more about what Shehan is saying.
Yeah, I think that if they are in the 9-10 win range, if they have a good season, like I think this is it. I mean, a lot's been made of it. They have a coach in waiting, right? Like they have Morgan Scalley. So like Morgan Scalley, I don't think that Utah is going to Will Muschamp him and have the guy stick around for 5 additional years after naming a coach in waiting. I think that they are trying to transition on. They've been very upfront when they hired Jason Beck as their offensive coordinator. Morgan Scalley was part of that decision making. So like they are trying to empower him and get him ready to do that. And again, look, like I think that Kyle Whittingham knows I've accomplished just about everything there is to accomplish in this sport. I'm the greatest coach in Utah history. I'm a legend. I can, all this stuff, right? And I think that he knows, man, if I can go out in a good place, like this is it. Like, why would you necessarily come back here after that? And you look up and down, like it was a little tough, like you said, to try to find some obvious ones because like Arizona with Brent Brennan, I think is obviously one that caught my eye. I think that Gundy is going to do enough to stick around, even if it's not great. but there's just not like a lot of other situations where there's obvious firing situations. And I mean, other than like Gundy choosing to walk away, there's not like a ton of obvious retirement situations either.
I do look forward to doing this podcast next year where we're talking about how Kyle Whittingham can repeat his big.
Okay. Look, well, I thought this. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I will say too, Deion's an interesting one, both for the combination of the health issues and also, like, this is a dynamic that I'm going to be fascinated by. Is it just like less fun to be head coach when you don't get to like do the cool thing with your sons?
Yeah.
And when you're just running a football program? Like, I could see Deion also saying, hey, like, you know, I similar deal. Like, if they go 3-9, I don't think he necessarily will want to walk away, but I could see him being like, this wasn't exactly the job I signed up for anymore. And I mean, this is literally pretty much done the thing.
This is literally the first year he's going to coach with the Suns.
He was, I think the spring 21 season, he didn't have any of his sons yet, but Shiloh might have been there, but that would have been it.
I'm with you on Whittingham. He was my top pick in the coach exit confidence draft that Richard and I did a few weeks ago. And that was before he went out and said explicitly, yeah, I thought about it last year, but I didn't want to go out on that note. How long are you going to keep Morgan Scalley on ice, really? Like, it's well said by you, Sean. They have a coach in waiting, and you're going to have him wait at least 3 full years, which is what it would be if they wait another year.
All right, see you next year.
Man, this could come back. This could come back and get me, but it feels like it's about time. Shehan Jayaraja of CBS Sports. This is maybe the longest podcast in Splits Under history, and you were a champion throughout it. We've been recording this thing for 2 hours.
This is not the first time that I've been told this was the longest podcast we ever did. I know that I struggle to shut up.
Now, this you're a champion for riding it out with us here, and you are champions if you have listened. Oh, wait. And you are champions if you have listened to this program. Thank you very much. We will see you very soon as conference preview season rolls on.